Hi, everyone. This is Anastasia Gores, and welcome to the Pilates Bridge Expert Interview Series. Today, I'm here with Kim Moscatello. And Kim, she has an amazing Instagram account, and this is how I got connected with her, started following her. But she challenges the traditional norms of teaching Pilates, incorporates strength training, all kinds of interesting movement, mobility, you name it. I've probably seen it on her channel at this point. But she creates amazing, very lighthearted videos as well. She has over, I think, 37,000 subscribers right now, right? Followers or something like that. It might be more after, if you're watching this interview a little bit later. But today we're going to be talking specifically about combining Pilates with strength training, the benefits of it. And also we're going to talk a little bit about using Instagram as a channel to reach more clients, more teachers, share your passion with more people. So to get started, Kim, I would like you just to kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, how you started with Pilates, where you are, how it all began.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for having me, and I appreciate those kind words. That's very sweet. I would say Pilates began for me as a physicality form when I was in college. Prior to that, I was always an exerciser from like fifth grade on. I have a connective tissue disorder and was always in a lot of pain, had a lot of injuries. So exercise became something that I channeled into to help me to feel more in my own body. So by the time I got to college, I had plenty of types of exercise already sort of in my back pocket, whether it be cardio or piloxing or all of the step classes and lifting weights and using equipment. So I was already doing all of that. And then something about Pilates clicked for me in college, going to mat classes and things where I found it cheap, because I was like, if I can figure this out, I can just do it in my apartment and I have no money. So this is good. And there was something about it that was like, wow, you're really teaching me how to like find where my body parts are. Because with EDS, like I have, it just feels like sometimes your body parts are floating in space. So even though I exercised a lot, I did find a lot of injuries and I was hurting myself often. And this just felt like it had a lot of value to it, even if I couldn't quite figure out why at first. So throughout college, I would do it on and off. And then as I started working in the corporate world, I wanted to know more about it, because even though I loved it, I still didn't really feel like I understood it. Like I just felt like there's a lot of value and I just don't really get it yet. So I initially just went to my first teacher training for that reason. I just wanted to understand how to apply it to myself deeper, and never necessarily expecting to teach it to anybody. I worked in finance. But then when I had my first son, I didn't want to go back to that and felt like, let me dabble a little bit in teaching math classes. And what does that look like? Started teaching in gyms and getting other certifications and other type of programming. And so it was just sort of a snowball effect. And I wound up, here I am all these years later, and this is what I do now, which is still kind of weird to me. But I think because it was never just Pilates for me throughout my life, it was always a lot of other things. The mishmash had already begun even long before Pilates certifications came. But I would say where like the turning point for me was probably in about 2015. I started working for a physical therapist and just doing these little 25-minute sessions with patients as they were phasing out of their PT, just for some extra exercise retuning sort of deal. And it was super interesting because they weren't paying for Pilates. They didn't want Pilates. They didn't know what the heck it was. And most of them were irritated because I was still teaching pretty close to the Pilates vest at that point. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, what is this? Like I would try to teach teach the method, teach the flow. And like my shoulder hurts. I was told you were going to help my shoulder. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. And I felt like I was at a crossroads where I went, do I have the Pilates ego where I sit here and go, they just don't understand, Or do I sit down with that and go, no, there's value in these exercises to the areas and the things that they're struggling with. I just need to apply those and stop caring about the rest, because that's what they're here for. And I need to give them what they need, not what I think it should look like. And that was a big turning point for me, where I started deconstructing and reconstructing just for the person in the room, and not caring if it was like following the order or if it looked like the Pilates execution. It just needed to be what this person needed in that area of their body, quickly, efficiently, get them stronger, help them feel better, move on. So those years taught me a whole lot about seeing the person and using the tools that you know as a movement coach, and whatever those tools are. I didn't care if it meant that I was a Pilates teacher, or if I was just a person helping this person get stronger with what I knew.
So were you still like at that point using mostly Pilates exercises, or just adding in something else?
Yeah, I think it started off mostly. I mean, the room that they gave me had a balanced body Allegro in it, and an exo chair and a spring. Like, they equipped me with Pilates equipment, and I was hired as a Pilates teacher. But if someone came back and it was all of these diagnoses that I had no exposure to before, because we, as Pilates teachers, we often see people come in and I have a herniated disc, or I have a rotator tear, or you hear the same things over and over again. Mm-hmm. But this was a situation where people were coming in, they would hand me children, 90-something-year-olds who had a walker and can barely move, someone with cerebral palsy who could barely move on one side and couldn't speak. And I was like, I literally don't know what to do. And I would leave work every day and go home and buy books or read up on that issue. What can I do for them? And it wasn't going to look like Pilates, you know, it just necessarily wasn't. That didn't mean I wasn't going to go into work and try to help them. So if there was some positioning on the apparatus that was going to work for that person, then we were going to do that. You know, I couldn't get that 93-year-old woman whose name was Joan to sit on the chair. She couldn't get on the reformer. So instead, I would sit her in front of the chair and have her use the pedal from the other side, because we couldn't get her high enough to sit on the chair. It starts to take you out of your Pilates head and be like, these are weights. This person needs to pull them. Let's figure out a way to make that happen for 20 minutes. And then you start to get really flexible when you have to do that for people.
Yeah, you're definitely kind of handed like some of the most challenging clients to work with, right? Like for all the people just working, like you said, in a regular studio, it's a pretty, you know, we get some difficult cases, but most of the time it's nothing like completely, you know, out there in space. But yeah, you had to learn on these people, like they had no intention of doing Pilates, which is first thing. And then they had major issues that you had to help them with. And, you know, and their body mechanics were probably also not ideal for what we would call like a flowy, traditional classical Pilates workout.
No, none of this was happening. Yeah.
Well, thanks.
So, you know,
yeah.
Yeah, I didn't mind. I was never gonna leave stuff out if it was something, an exercise that I had done for myself in another class, or I had taught in the gym in a different modality. I was never going to be the person to leave that out as an application for somebody just to continue calling myself a teacher of Pilates. Like, to me, that's insanity. Like, if you have information that can help a person, but you feel like, well, that's not my title, so I'm not going to pass that along, I can't have a conversation with you. So with these people in the room looking for my help, if I knew an exercise that I thought was really good for their shoulder and it wasn't a Pilates application, I'm still going to show you that exercise. Like, we're still going to do it together. And the progression of that through the years, where we go, and I said this on a different podcast recently, Pilates teachers are strength trainers. We are applying strength training principles to people's bodies. So if we know other applications of strength training, then it should totally be our job to pull that into the room, whether it's with a spring or if it's with something else, because there is a lot of other information out there. And when you put them together, what you can really create is a movement monster. You really can, because there are things missing from Pilates, not just movement mechanics, but the way we push and pull weight. But there are things that are missing from the traditional gym environment often that they could take from Pilates. And when you take them and you put them together, that kind of a person can move through everything and feel prepared for almost anything. So I think like they are so complementary. It's crazy. If you know how to do Pilates in the gym, and if you know how to do gym in the Pilates studio, you are golden as far as physical fitness, in my opinion.
No, I agree. Like I personally, I love working out at the gym myself. I love Pilates. Love that. I do a little bit of yoga, a little bit of running, and I feel like I can't leave any of it out.
Right.
It all
Yeah.
like it's kind of smushed together in one way or another. I can't take it out of my brain, can't take it out of my body, but it all works together.
It
For
does.
the good. But also one thing that I wanted to mention also for our listeners and people who are watching it, just what you were talking about, like from what we know about Joseph Pilates, this is exactly what he was doing. Like he'll have people who could move or he, couldn't do certain things, and what he would do, he would just divide, like create piece of apparatus or specific attachment for the springs to make it available to those specific individuals to challenge it. And that was, I think, the genius of his method, that he took the people who maybe were not great movers or did not have specific physical fitness level, and he made this form of exercise available to them.
Yes.
So thank you. So let's talk a little bit about, we're already started talking about like the weights and the springs, right? Like Pilates is all spring-based resistance, most of it. I mean, we have a little standing arm series with the weights, but yeah. 2-pound weights, in my opinion, are not going to get you very far.
Not doing it. Nope.
And obviously in the gym, we have like heavy weights, and a lot of people from working, I feel like a lot of people, they come to Pilates because, especially women, because they're scared of weights. It's just, you show them a weight and it's just deer in headlights, and they're just, for some reason, they think they're either gonna turn into Arnold Schwarzenegger by, lifting 5-pound weights in their arms, or that weight is just going to crush them for some reason. And, obviously a lot of people maybe doing exercising in the gym, there's like, oh, it's all weights, I just want to do that. Pilates, that is just nothing, right? So how do you feel that they complement each other? Why do you think that the weights need to be present for just that functional fitness? In life Pilates students.
You can kind of start it off by talking about some of the limitations when it comes to spring tension. First, they only ever weigh a certain amount. They weigh what they weigh. Even like the different adjusted colored springs of the contemporary weights, they only will ever weigh that much. You can never pass that. In addition, they don't weigh the same amount throughout. So it's going to weigh the most at max pull than it does at the initial pull, which is not going to be true with a dumbbell of a certain set weight. So a bicep curl of 25 pounds is going to feel like that to the muscle group throughout the contraction and the eccentric, but a spring is quite different. Now, that makes springs great in a certain way because it helps to teach that continuous end range control in both directions. And this is where I'm going back to saying how they complement each other. A dumbbell or a barbell gives you no sense of control. You're either in control of it or it's doing something to you, right? So springs can kind of teach you how to control where your body is in space, move a weight load with resistance, do it without maybe finding these places where momentum is jerking you out of where you want to be, which is going to happen to you with a free weight if you're not understanding where technique comes from. But as far as actually applying a certain weight load, you hit a point, you plateau. If you don't move past it, you're never going to get a certain muscle group stronger. This is just how muscles grow in size. Now, we love to say Pilates is all body all the time. It's said as a pro. It is a pro until it's a con. Now, all of these positions, when it comes to spring tension, means that we're placing ourselves for the most part in very unstable positions because we're wanting our body to co-contract against the force of the spring, which means that we can never be focusing on max output or strength expression of any one area. Because when you're in the gym, if you're doing a strength training exercise, the idea is to make yourself, for the most part, as stable as possible when you want to push the most amount of weight. If you're doing like a chest press or a bar, like a bench press for the most part, right? You're laying down on your back, your feet are locked on the floor, your back's in a certain position because it gives you the most stable place for your shoulders to be able to press against the most amount of weight. We want to lock ourselves up because it's the only way to put that amount of weight on top of ourselves. But the apparatus is designed for you to be unstable because it's working your core and trying to get you to control your spine. So it's leaving holes, right? Where we have to give up certain aspects of strength to be able to get others. But the other ones are important too. Slow and controlled is only good for certain things. Life ain't slow and controlled. There's a lot of times where you're doing something quick, where you're caught off guard, where you have to lift weight, where you have, like, this is more lifelike than Pilates. Pilates is not that lifelike. So I find, no, why I don't want it to be insulting because Pilates has amazing benefits. That end range, you don't always get in the gym unless you focus on it because you're always locked in place or moving very neutrally. So a lot of people in the gym, if they're not focused on it, you'll see their arms can't go all the way up or their knees can't bend really deep because these aren't things that they focus on. So where the two meet, there can be a lot of benefit. But like you said with dumbbells, I hate to gender generalize, we all do, but women just don't pick up the heavy weights for the most part still. There's a progression. It's definitely getting better. But it's not a coincidence that women's grip strength tends to be more lacking. Our wrists are smaller already, right? And you see that when it comes to holding something for long periods of time or rotating in their wrists, there's a lag of strength in the forearm that goes all the way up to the shoulder. And then we have, these are problems. If you're a person who holds dumbbells, heavy ones a lot, these are less problems. Because literally no matter what you do with a heavy weight in your hand, all of this has to be strong just to hold it. Right. So this is not true with the spring. So I'm just pointing out the issues of like, oh, if you do Pilates, it's strength training, it's resistant. Yeah, it is. But we're missing really important factors. Even the fact that no matter what you do, if you're doing leg day in the gym, unless you're using a machine, if you're doing free weights and barbells, you're always holding it anyway. So even leg day is hand and arm day in some sort of aspect. But on the Pilates apparatus, if you're doing leg exercises, you're pretty much just doing leg exercises, right?
Yep.
Like even if you're doing on the Cadillac or the tower and you're standing and squatting, let's say with the roll down bar in your hand, it's not like heavy pushing you down. It's something that you're pulling towards you. It's not like a weight that's pushing down on your legs. These are just very similar mechanics, but the application and load is entirely different. So I do try to find so many ways, even in the Pilates studio, if it's not with dumbbells, to take the weight of the springs and put them down rather than up.
Okay.
So it's a weight, right? So that it's a weight that is always pulling them down, and their body has that experience of having to try to pull it up. So these are definitely aspects of like trying to take the gym and bring it into the studio so they feel a little bit more married.
Yeah, no, I wanted also just to kind of when we were talking about the wrist, something that I noticed a lot. I worked with a lot of women, and they have those wrist injuries all the time. Not from Pilates, they fall, they catch themselves, and what do they have, a sprained wrist or something like that. They work on the computers, and that's something that happens quite a lot. And honestly, in Pilates, I find that it's really hard at some point to strengthen that, because the like those specific wrist exercises that not really, they're not specific wrist exercise, but when we're holding the strap, right, it's already pulling it back, and if there's not enough strength to hold that wrist in place, no matter how many times we're going to tell them keep the wrist straight, they just don't have it. They might have it in their shoulder and their arm, but that wrist is just as floppy.
Right.
And it's only making it, or like any type of like plank front support exercise, again, like there's all that pressure of the weight, but if that wrist can't really control it, and and then obviously same. Go ahead.
And it's interesting in the repertoire, because for all of the lack of heavy application strength work to the shoulders and the upper body, there is actually a lot of exercises that puts tremendous demand on them. Right? You pass the beginner and the fundamental, and even though there aren't these opportunities for heavy lat exercises or delt exercises, now we're like, hey, basically stand on your hands for the next like 15 exercises.
Yeah.
But like we didn't do anything to build any of this up, but now you're going to stand on your hand for every one of these more intermediate and advanced exercises. And then people are like, oh, I wish I could do that, but it hurts my wrists. Really? I wonder why. Like we didn't do anything to prepare that area of you, and now we want you to do this crazy thing with it. Yeah,
and then obviously we get also in Pilates studios, we get so many clients who come in after going to the gym or CrossFit or anything like that and injuring themselves, because just like you were saying, they were doing things with the momentum without thinking about the control of the movement. And there can be that debate in the studios, like, oh, okay, CrossFit, all that, it's so bad for you because all you do is get injured. Well, yes, if you're not doing it correctly, that's where movement and like Pilates comes in, just to teach you how to move so you can do both.
Everything is just in whether or not you're prepared and have you graded your exposure to it. I do try to retrain people's expression of things like that, at least in my own studio. Like, I don't want to say people are not allowed to talk like that, but in a certain way, they're not allowed to talk like that. I always reframe those statements. We all have, and I'll say to people, anything you look, because I get it on Instagram. If you look at me do something, and when you see me do it, your instinct is to go, oh my God, she's going to get hurt. Not only is that not true, but actually all it just said was where you think you're vulnerable. I'll say that again. Because it really is. It exposes, just like when you see a person outside picking something up or twisting their back, or a kid jumping on a trampoline. If you see somebody doing something and your first thing is to go, oh my God, that's going to kill them. All that's saying is that you know that if you did it, you would hurt yourself. And to me, that means that's where you need to lean in. Not run and jump into like that expression of it. But what does it tell you? See me do this crazy thing with my knees, like a squat that you all ever think that you would do. Oh my God, that would destroy my knee. Well, what does that say to me? It means that you're afraid to either bring your knee that far down or with that amount of weight. Let's investigate that. Why do you think that that's something that's harmful? Are you weak there? Let's work on that. So that doesn't seem like something that's completely scary for us to do. So Pilates people tend to make these comments about whether it's CrossFit or just something high intensity, because Pilates ain't intense. I'll say that one again too. Pilates is not intense. And that tends to be a draw for a lot of people, because it's still exercise, it's still challenging, but it's often not intense. There aren't these moments where you're just like, oh my God, like I just can't do more of this. Like we can kind of stay in this like state of homeostasis and still get through a Pilates session. So then we'll look down on intense exercise, like any form of intensity is going to harm you. That's a problem too. Intensity is not a demon. There's nothing wrong with working intently. So maybe let's make people do that a little bit in the studio. So then that doesn't seem like something that's going to hurt them. I do try to open those windows and be like, intense is not a bad thing. Power is not a bad thing. Me locking you up so that I put on all 5 springs and say, shove it. And then they look at me and go, but it's going to look like, I don't care. Shove it. just trying to take whatever expectations they think something's supposed to look like. Because when you push something really hard, it don't look cute.
Mm-mm.
It doesn't look cute when you push a wheelbarrow. It doesn't look cute when you throw a shovel of snow. It doesn't look cute. So I'm just going to put all these springs on and you're going to push it and you're fine.
I love it.
And eventually when they warm up to that environment, then it's very freeing. It really is I try to cultivate a free environment of like, we're just trying to do some cool, hard things. I'm not going to make you hurt yourself, but also don't think you need to impress me with some sort of stoic expression or some sort of fluid fall. Like, I literally don't care.
Yeah, I think people definitely in the Pilates environment and Pilates studios, like, and I'm talking about the clients more, they can get like too much in their head about making something look specific way or act where they limit themselves. Because
Yeah.
they might be looking at somebody on their next reform or doing something like really great with a great range of motions, like, oh my word, and I'm just not looking anywhere like that. Well, who cares? Just like you said. It doesn't matter. And then, you know, if it's working your body, that's all that really matters. And if you're getting stronger, more experiencing greater range of motion, it's all good.
You know, and it's these comical contradictions, because when it comes to a personal training environment, what you're often looking for from somebody is their rate of perceived exertion, or RPE. Right. So you're going to determine whether or not somebody's basically having a challenging exercise or a challenging program based on how close they are to basically not being able to do it. Whether that's training a weight to failure or doing cardiovascular in a zone that they can't speak in a normal tone of voice or carry on a conversation. You're supposed to be rating your workouts based on your perceived rate of exertion. I'm at 80% here. I don't want to do anymore, or I'm getting close to where I can't do more, or like, you're supposed to get there. But there's some sense in a Pilates environment where like, no, we don't get there. Like, it's not supposed to be like that. Why? Why is it not supposed to be like that? Because it starts to look uglier, is why. And yeah, I hate to have that strong voice about it, but it became a very aesthetic modality. And I don't like that about it. And I don't know that that was its intention with Josie Pilates, because if you look back, and I don't really talk about him very much because I feel like I don't really teach it anymore, to be honest with you. But if you look back at old videos and photos of him, I mean, honestly, his form, the form of his students, if you look at those videos from Jacob's Pillow and stuff like that, these are not people who are looking real cute. And they were rolling around. They were like a hot mess a lot of times, and they definitely weren't looking for the lines necessarily that we teach everybody to teach now. So I really don't know that Pilates has moved the way that necessarily it was when he was teaching it, where it was all about how perfect and how cute it looks. That sort of changed, I think, with the generations of teachers that came out of him, and then with the dance influences and so on and so forth. Obviously that, but so we got all confused. It's a strength expression, like you said. That's what he was doing. He was making stuff up as he went, as a new person was in front of him and they had a new need, but he wanted people to get stronger. I don't know that he cared super about, like, you know, like you see them in them and they're like this and he's pushing them down and it doesn't look all that great. So I think to some ways we could benefit from looking back at those photos and be like, maybe we should be a little less cute.
I love it.
Yeah.
So how you, right, so we kind of talked a little bit everywhere. So at the beginning, we mentioned that you have this great following on Instagram, and this is where you share a lot of your ideas and a lot of great exercise tips and like your personal exercise explorations, right? So at what point did you start your Instagram channel or account and just started really thinking, like, okay, this can be something I really want to put a lot of effort into? How did that come together?
Yeah, I opened the account in 2018. Instagram was different then. It wasn't trying to be TikTok yet. So it was sort of like the OG Instagrammers. When I opened my account, it was actually I was still working for the physical therapist because I was a couple years in and I was feeling kind of lonely. I had been at the studio for a couple of years and by myself in this little room, one patient at a time. And I felt kind of cut off just from the Pilates community. And I was just looking to find a way where I felt like I was part of one again. So that was my main reason for even opening the account. And on top of that, I'm really bad at being able to decipher my own exercises in writing. Like I would, come up with something and then write it down and then I'd read it back. I'm like, what the hell was I talking about? My foot was where? so I so I started just recording videos of things I was going to do in classes or with clients just so that I had a record of them and would just upload it as a place to have it. I had no expectations other than that. I just wanted a little piece of community and a place that I had a cloud of exercises. I mean, it grew a little bit, I guess, at that point, but I think a little before COVID and then during COVID, everybody was on social media, so things grew a little bit more. To be honest, I never really put that much effort into growing my Instagram. I just was putting up exercises and would chit chat with other Pilates teachers. And so we would share each other. And Instagram was still big on sharing exercise people. Since 2021, I would say it's crickets. They could care less unless you're like a content creator making funny reels, dancing under 15 seconds, using their preferred audio, following up. Like if you're gonna do that, they'll share you, but otherwise it's definitely crickets. You have to follow their rules. But I was never really trying to grow a following per se. It was never like a goal of mine. I told you most of my business is in person. So it wasn't like a business thing. I didn't even really have a goal of trying to expand online whatsoever. But what I will say is that if you're going to use Instagram as a tool to build business, you're going to go that way. You're going to have to kind of like fall in line with how to be a shareable person and to create content that is quite shareable so that your audience can grab it and put it in their stories or grab it and put it on their feed because that's how more people are going to find you. But having said that, I'd say I've gotten more business in the last year to year and a half, like actual business, just by not caring what I say and narrowing my audience based on what I really think. Because prior to COVID, I was just doing what I explained to you, which was just like putting up exercises because I had them on my phone and like, here, take them. If you can use them, go with God. And that's what I would do. And that's all my account was. But I was still working for studios. I was still working for Pilates businesses. And so I was holding back a little of my voice on certain things because I didn't want to burn bridges or make anybody mad or make some waves. I'm 100% in this house now. So I'm on a privileged stand that I can be like, I don't really care anymore. I think that thing over there is bullshit. And I'm just gonna say it. And this stuff in the industry over there, like that's not cool. We need to stop doing that. So I'm just gonna say that. And as I come out that way more of myself and just saying the things that I think, that's where a lot of businesses come from because a lot of people agree with me and they want that. So my advice to people who actually want real business is to not care about a following but just to genuinely identify who you think your audience is and what you have to say to those people and say it. Because those are the people that are actually going to pay to work with you, not the people that just hit the follow number. Most of them you never hear from.
Yeah, yeah, you have, again, like I've been watching a lot of your reels and videos. Like, I mean, out of the shareable things that you mentioned, I think one of my favorite posts of you that was lately was the one when you talked, what was the, I wrote it down. Oh, where was it? It was the one, if we did life like we practice Pilates.
It was say again. Oh, yeah.
That one, and I'll include a link to it. I just thought it was just hilarious how you did it, and it was just funny. And you know, it was a great idea. I know like there are some other industries that did kind of similar things, you know, and
Yeah,
all
yeah, that's where I pulled them.
but how you demonstrated it was awesome. It kind
Yeah.
of really shows how you can bring Pilates into real life, but not
Mhm.
quite.
Yeah. Or how ludicrous it is to think that
Yeah,
that's how they would
yeah,
do
to
that.
not, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, to expect that kind of movement and everything. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was a great video.
Thanks.
So for you, just right, I mean, obviously right now you're just being who you are, being
Yeah.
organic, authentic with your voice on Instagram. Um, what does your average day look like? Not necessarily with the Instagram, but just doing working with the clients and everything. Do you spend a lot of time thinking about the type of content that you want to put up somewhere there? Or do you just say, you know, if you feel like it's a creative moment, let's go for it, and I'm just not going to worry about it? What's your day?
My days are, I teach like 5 to 6 hours a day, one-on-one people, whether that's a combination of Zoom or in person. I also teach for Fuse Ladder. I'm not sure if you know that
Mhm.
their apparatus. I have it. So
Mhm.
we're a Skibberlin's company, and so I teach on that. I'll record video, classes for their company. As far as the content I put up on Instagram, I probably currently have no less than 3,000 videos no one's ever seen. Because that's how often I record things, because it's not for Instagram. I was still recording for the same reason I said I was recording 10 years ago. It's just so that I have a record of things I might want to apply with a client or something that I'm working on for myself. I video for any number of those reasons. They just stay on my phone. So when I'm sitting at the end of the night, I have two children. I'm often at my daughter's art class or at one of her soccer practices sitting in the car. I'll go through my phone and be like, what might somebody be able to use? And I'll grab a few and I'll put it on Instagram. That's how much thought goes into it. To be honest, the creative reels, the ones where I'm making fun of something or a little anecdote, that always comes piggybacked off of a conversation with a client from that morning. So something will happen in the studio. They'll either do something or make a comment about something, or something industry related will come up with a teacher I'm working with, and that will spark like either an annoyance in me. It'll like trigger something in that conversation. And then those reels always wind up happening in like 45 seconds, because the second they leave, I already have the idea. I just hit play and then I put those are the fastest ones, because it usually comes on the back of a conversation with somebody. And I'm like, I know what I have to make a reel about now. So truthfully, the content kind of comes out pretty organically, because it's either, like I said, on the back of a conversation, or it's just stuff I have on my phone right now that I could share a video every day for the next 5 years and never record a
Wow.
single other thing. There's so much on my phone.
Man, where do you get all that storage?
I have an SD card. I have external storage. But usually once a week is usually on a Sunday. I'll just go in the studio. I tell my family they need to stay away, and I'll go in there for like a couple hours, and I just screw around with whatever, just bounce from apparatus to apparatus, and I'll hit the phone, I'll turn it on. And some things work and some things don't work, but it's just me sort of messing with movement. And then I'll leave on Sunday evening and go through my head with clients. Oh, I think that would be good with this person, or I bet we can do part of that with that person. And that's what I'll draw from throughout the week with people, as we're working.
And do you have your favorite like apps that you might be using just to edit some of your videos, or anything like that, or just whatever?
I've had the same app on my phone since 2018. I think it's called like UCut or something. I mean, all it does is speed it up and cut it. Yeah,
Okay.
no. I mean, you can see like these are not super fancy, high cultivated videos that I put up there. They're just
But I think that's what makes it just sound so real, because sometimes you will watch certain accounts, whether it's Instagram or YouTube, it's like everything's so perfect. And maybe some other, people that I work with, it's like, oh, we want to start a channel, post more, but like everything just is so imperfect. I just don't have the perfect camera or the perfect phone or the perfect lighting or the perfect microphone, or I don't know how to cut. And there's just so many things where, like you said, you just take what you have and use
yeah,
it and go with it.
yeah. No, you really do, and you don't get used to it until you just do it, and you just do it a lot. And so now what is this 6 years almost into this? And in the beginning, I was like, oh, that angle looks terrible, or I'm gonna do this 5 times. I don't look skinny enough. Or I would bring my flat iron. Like I cringe. Like I cringe to think that I used to do this. I just like bring my flat iron to the studio to like redo my hair before making a video. Like what the hell was I doing? But but it's a weird, uncomfortable arena to
Mhm.
see, to especially to see yourself moving, because prior to that I never recorded myself exercising before. You're in really weird shapes and like skin is hanging out. It's like it's weird to get used to seeing yourself like that, but practice makes perfect, and eventually you just stop giving a crap, and they're just like whatever.
Yeah, I know.
I'm
Like
wearing
in our heads, we
now I'm
always
wearing pajamas and my hair is like I don't even know what's happening.
yeah. No, it's fun. Like I know, like in our heads, we always move better and more perfect than in real life, right? Like what
Mhm.
we're doing in here, it's like, oh wow. And then we look at us, oh my word.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
complain at my clients that they're not doing it perfect. Look at me.
Right, right. But then that's like people like me are part of the problem. Is you're going on Instagram and you're presenting your fifth take of snake and twist because you want to show like the best repetition when the other ones were a mess, or maybe your hand slipped the first time, or your foot wasn't in the right position. Well, what are we showing people here that like we keep talking about how like don't worry about it being perfect, and yet when you put your video up it's like only the most perfect repetition that you could possibly show. Like let's just be real here and just show them all.
So I know we're kind of getting close to the end of our interview. So if there's just one thing that you could share that you wish more people would practice and teach, like people who practice and teach Pilates could take away from this interview, what do you think this one thing would be?
I would say most important is keep people in the focus, not moves. Okay, we're teaching people, we're not teaching moves. And caring too much about rules can become false gods. And the Pilates industry specifically can get really good at pushing such hard rules that we create these false gods. We worship the rules, and then we don't see the people anymore because all of that information is in front of us, and then the person is like way over here. But we have to remove all of that and remember what you're in the room to do. And what you're in the room to do is like get that person feeling better in the body they're in that day, and then make it stronger. That's your focus. So Pilates teacher training or whatever else you've learned, those are tools in your toolbox to apply to this human being that is not just like a bag of body parts. There's a lot of reasons beyond muscles and bones why they might not be able to do a certain thing, or why they say something hurts. So the only other thing I would say is to Pilates teachers is to really try to learn other stuff, not just other exercise types, but also learn about pain and learn about a little of like the psychology of fear, or why somebody might want to attempt to do it. Like it's all really there with a human being when it comes to physicality. And I think you only become a better teacher when you understand all that. And it helps you to see that person and how to get them to achieve something that might feel really unachievable to them when they walk in. I guess that would be my takeaway is Pilates is a wonderful, wonderful exercise. And I love its ability to make hard things accessible, which I think is a really huge selling point for a lot of people. Like you can come in and do really cool, really kind of hard things, but it's accessible because of the way those springs can pull you around. And I love it for that. It helps people to move past fear of certain types of exercises, or the way that they can move their body in this crazy way because it feels fun and it feels doable. But don't stop there. You know, as teachers, don't stop there. Realize that there's now you got the person there. There's other ways now to try to get them to do harder things, because the springs can become so supportive that that's just where you live.
Got it. Thank you. And for anyone who wants to work with you, what are the best ways that they can get connected with you or work with you, whether these are just people who want to experience something a little wacky in their Pilates workout, or teachers who want to learn to teach in a different way? What's the best way to learn from you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a small internet platform on Patreon that has, I know, over 100 videos of various types and tutorials and whatnot that you can sign up for real cheap. But as far as working with me one-on-one, and I think that that's what I love the most, is to work with people one-on-one. Just contact me directly, either through my Instagram page or through email. I do Zooms with teachers all over this country and abroad. We can sync up a time. I'll do mentor relationships that are just once in a while. They don't have to be like every single week. For some teachers, that's just to discuss some of this stuff and work through it themselves, or if they have questions on how to apply or learn another kind of modality that they don't know because they want to apply it to a client and don't know how. Or sometimes they just, like you said, they want to work out that's quite different than one that they might give themselves. So all of that is an option. So please always feel like you can reach out and connect with me personally.
Do you ever teach any workshops specifically for teachers?
I haven't done like a virtual one. I've had a couple workshops up on like Fusion Pilates EDU. I filmed with them a couple times, but I haven't done a workshop through like promoting for myself. So that's definitely, and it's something that I've thought about and I'm looking into to try to see what is it that teachers would feel like is beneficial that I could give them of value. If it was a wide group of teachers, what could I provide that those teachers would be looking for? So if you're listening to this and you have something interested, feel free to shoot it my way.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, thanks again, Kim, for sharing all your thoughts, sharing about what you think about Pilates, about exercise, movement, Instagram, and for taking the time to talk to me here. I hope you have a great day, and I look forward, hopefully, to maybe shooting another interview with you sometime.
Yeah,
And you
that would be
the workshops.
wonderful. I appreciate you for having me. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.